My name is Ernestine, and I'm 53 years old. Last Thanksgiving changed everything I thought I knew about my life. I was setting the table in my suburban Chicago home, arranging the good china my mother gave me 25 years ago, when Harold and I first married. The house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon filling every corner with warmth. My son Thomas had just married Beverly 8 months earlier, and I couldn't have been happier watching our family grow. But sometimes, the people closest to us harbor the darkest secrets. Before I share what happened that night, please let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. You won't believe how this family dinner changed everything forever. I met Harold when I was 28 at a construction conference in Denver. He was this confident engineer with kind eyes who bought me coffee and listened to my dreams of starting an interior design business. 25 years later, he still brought me flowers every Friday and never forgot our anniversary. We built what I thought was the perfect marriage, complete with Sunday morning pancakes and shared dreams of growing old together. Thomas made us proud every single day. After graduating from Northwestern with honors, he landed a position at a prestigious law firm downtown. He was everything we hoped for in a son, thoughtful and ambitious, calling me every Wednesday just to check in. When he met Beverly through a dating app last year, I welcomed her with open arms. Beverly was 25, a sweet elementary school teacher with blonde hair and the brightest smile. She reminded me of myself at that age, eager to please and full of hope. I spent weekends teaching her my secret recipes, taking her shopping for furniture for their new apartment. She called me Mom Ernestine, something that made my heart swell with joy every time. Their wedding 8 months ago was everything I dreamed of. Beverly looked radiant in my grandmother's pearl necklace, something old to carry our family tradition forward. Harold walked her down the aisle since her father had passed away years earlier. The way Thomas looked at her during their vows reminded me of how Harold used to look at me. I spent 3 days preparing for this Thanksgiving dinner. The 18-pound turkey had been brining since Monday, my homemade cranberry sauce was cooling in the refrigerator, and the pumpkin pie was my mother's recipe that took all afternoon to perfect. I had already started planning the nursery in our spare bedroom, hoping Beverly and Thomas would give us grandchildren soon. But lately, Beverly seemed different. She appeared nervous during our shopping trips, checking her phone constantly and seeming distracted when I spoke. I attributed it to work stress, knowing how demanding teaching could be, especially with the holiday season approaching. Looking back now, I realized those were the first warning signs that something was terribly wrong. The doorbell rang at 4 o'clock sharp, and our house quickly filled with laughter and conversation. Harold's brother Vernon arrived with his wife Janet, carrying a bottle of wine and stories about their recent trip to Florida. My parents had flown up from Tampa, thrilled to spend the holiday with their only grandchild and his new wife. The dining room buzzed with comfortable family chatter. Vernon was telling Harold about a construction project he was bidding on, while Janet helped me arrange the side dishes. My father carved the turkey with the precision of a surgeon, something he took great pride in every year. The cranberry sauce gleamed like jewels in my mother's crystal bowl. But I noticed Beverly picking at her food, barely touching the green bean casserole she usually loved. When I offered her wine, she quickly declined, saying she was taking medication for a headache. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass, and she kept glancing toward Harold with an expression I couldn't quite read. Harold seemed unusually attentive to Beverly throughout dinner. When she needed salt, he passed it before she asked. When she spilled a drop of gravy on the tablecloth, he immediately handed her his napkin. These small gestures struck me as odd, but I pushed the thoughts away, focusing on being a good hostess. The conversation flowed from Thomas's recent promotion to our plans for a family vacation in Cabo next spring. Beverly contributed little, nodding politely but seeming lost in her own thoughts. When she excused herself to use the restroom, Harold stood up moments later, claiming he needed to get another bottle of wine from the kitchen. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. The timing of their departures, the way they both seemed nervous, Harold's unusual attention to Beverly throughout the meal. When they returned to the table, both looked flushed, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Beverly's lipstick was slightly smudged, and Harold's shirt collar seemed disheveled. As we moved into dessert, I proudly served my homemade pumpkin pie with fresh whipped cream. Everyone complimented the perfect spice blend and flaky crust, but Beverly only took a few small bites. The conversation turned to Christmas plans, and I felt that familiar warmth of family togetherness. When I started collecting the dessert plates, Beverly stood to help me. She moved behind my chair, reaching for my father's empty plate when she leaned down close to my ear. What she whispered next shattered my world into a million pieces. "I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant with your husband's child." The words hit me like a physical blow. My fork clattered to the floor, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent room in my mind. Though everyone else continued their cheerful conversation, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I had just heard. This had to be some kind of terrible mistake. My heart pounded so violently, I was certain everyone could hear it. The room seemed to spin around me, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Beverly's face appeared in my peripheral vision, tears already forming in her eyes, her expression a mixture of guilt and desperate pain. This couldn't be real. Not Harold, not my Harold, who brought me flowers every Friday and held my hand during movies. Not Beverly, the sweet girl, who called me Mom and helped me bake cookies for the church fundraiser. Not with my son sitting right there completely unaware that his world was about to crumble. 25 years of marriage flashed before my eyes in an instant. Our first apartment with the leaky faucet Harold promised to fix. The night Thomas was born and Harold cried harder than I did. Every anniversary dinner, every shared dream, every moment I thought we were building something real and lasting. "Honey, are you okay?" Harold's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "You look pale." I forced myself to look at him, this man I thought I knew better than myself. His face showed what appeared to be genuine concern, but now I wondered if everything about him was an act. How long had this been going on? How many lies had he told me while looking at me with those same concerned eyes? "I'm fine," I managed to whisper, though my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Just need some air." I excused myself to the kitchen, my legs somehow carrying me away from the table despite feeling like they might give out at any moment. The familiar space that had always been my sanctuary now felt like a prison. The cheerful yellow walls seemed to mock my devastation. Beverly followed me, closing the kitchen door behind her. The moment we were alone, she broke down completely, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Ernestine, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. I never meant to hurt you." "How could you?" The words came out as a strangled whisper. "He's my husband. Thomas is your husband. How could you do this to us?" Through her tears, Beverly choked out the truth I wasn't ready to hear. "It's been going on for 3 months. I know it's wrong. I know it's terrible. I don't know what to do." 3 months. While I was planning their anniversary dinner, while I was shopping for Christmas presents for their first married Christmas, while I was dreaming of grandchildren, my husband was destroying everything we had built. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Harold slept peacefully beside me. How could he sleep so soundly when my entire world had just collapsed? I studied his face in the moonlight, searching for signs of the stranger he had apparently become. But he looked exactly like the man I had loved for 25 years. The next morning, Harold kissed me goodbye and headed to work as if nothing had changed. He even reminded me to call the plumber about the guest bathroom sink, the same thoughtful gesture he made every day. I watched him drive away in his blue pickup truck, wondering if I had dreamed the entire nightmare. But I knew I hadn't. The devastating truth sat in my chest like a lead weight, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to function. I needed proof, concrete evidence that would either confirm my worst fears or prove that somehow I had misunderstood everything. I started with Harold's phone records, accessing our account online. Page after page of calls and texts to Beverly's number, sometimes at midnight, sometimes during his lunch breaks. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of communication I had never known existed. The credit card statements revealed restaurant charges at places we had never been together. The Italian place downtown where Harold claimed he was having business lunches. The hotel bar where he said he was meeting clients. Every entry felt like another knife in my heart. I called Beverly and demanded we meet immediately. She arrived at the coffee shop on Elm Street, looking disheveled and frightened, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she hadn't slept either. We sat in a corner booth, two women whose lives had been destroyed by the same man. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to know the truth." Beverly's story poured out in broken sentences and tears. It had started in August when Thomas was in Los Angeles for 2 weeks on a business trip. Harold offered to help fix Beverly's car, something that seemed innocent and helpful at the time. But Harold had been persistent, charming, telling her things about me that weren't true. "He said you didn't understand him anymore," Beverly sobbed. "He said your marriage was just for appearances, that you had grown apart. He made me feel special, like I was the only one who really saw him." The manipulation was textbook preying on a young woman's insecurities and loneliness. Thomas worked long hours trying to establish himself at the firm, leaving Beverly alone most evenings. Harold became her confidant, her shoulder to cry on, and eventually much more. "I discovered I was pregnant 2 weeks ago," Beverly whispered. "Harold promised he would leave you. He said he loved me and wanted to start a new life together. 25 years reduced to a lie he told to seduce a girl young enough to be his daughter. I felt something inside me break that could never be repaired, but I also felt something else beginning to grow. Anger. Pure, righteous anger at the betrayal and manipulation. "Does Thomas know?" I asked. Beverly shook her head. "Harold said he would tell him, but he keeps making excuses. I can't keep living this lie." That evening, Harold came home with Chinese takeout and a bouquet of daisies, acting like the devoted husband he had pretended to be for months. But I was done pretending. I was done being the naive wife who trusted blindly while her world crumbled around her. "Harold, we need to talk. I know about Beverly." His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, denial, then resignation. "What about Beverly? What are you talking about?" I spread the phone records and credit card statements across our kitchen table like evidence in a courtroom. His eyes widened as he realized how thoroughly I had investigated his deception. "Ernestine, I can explain everything," he started, but I held up my hand to stop him. "First, you're going to tell me the truth. All of it. No more lies." Harold tried several different approaches. First, he denied everything, claiming the evidence was circumstantial. Then he admitted to a friendship with Beverly, but insisted nothing inappropriate had happened. Finally, faced with overwhelming proof, he confessed to the affair, but tried to minimize its significance. "It didn't mean anything," he said, reaching for my hands across the table. "It was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. You're the one I love." A 3-month mistake. I pulled my hands away. A mistake that resulted in a pregnancy. The color drained from Harold's face. He hadn't known that Beverly had told me about the baby. For a moment, he looked genuinely shocked, and I realized that even in his betrayal, he was still keeping secrets from everyone. Harold's response revealed his true character. Instead of accepting responsibility, he began blaming me. Our marriage had become stale. I didn't appreciate him anymore. I was always busy with my own projects and friends. According to Harold, his affair was somehow my fault for not being the wife he needed. "So, you decided to destroy our family?" I asked. "You decided to sleep with our son's wife?" Harold's justifications became increasingly desperate. He claimed Beverly pursued him, that she was unhappy with Thomas, that the pregnancy might not even be his. Every word revealed how little respect he had for any of us, how easily he could rationalize devastating the people who loved him most. When I told him I was considering divorce, Harold's demeanor changed completely. He begged for forgiveness, promised to end things with Beverly immediately, even threatened to harm himself if I left him. But I could see through his manipulation, now recognizing the same tactics he had used on Beverly. "You have 24 hours to tell Thomas the truth," I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. "If you don't, I will." Harold made his choice, and it wasn't me. The next morning, he packed a suitcase and moved in with Beverly, abandoning 25 years of marriage without looking back. His decision made the next steps clear, though no less painful. I called Thomas and asked him to come over immediately. When my son walked through the door, I could see he already sensed something was wrong. The conversation that followed was the hardest thing I had ever done, watching my child's heart break as I explained his father's betrayal and his wife's pregnancy. Thomas's initial reaction was rage. He wanted to drive to Beverly's apartment and confront Harold physically, but I convinced him that violence would only make everything worse. Instead, we sat together on the couch where I had rocked him as a baby, both of us crying for the family we had lost. Beverly called Thomas that evening and confirmed everything. She was 3 months pregnant with Harold's child. The affair had been going on since August, and Harold had promised to leave me for her. Thomas listened in silence, then quietly told her he was filing for divorce the next morning. The legal proceedings moved quickly. I hired Sarah Mitchell, the best divorce attorney in the county, a woman with a reputation for protecting betrayed wives from manipulative husbands. Sarah immediately began investigating Harold's finances, discovering that he had been moving money into secret accounts for months. Harold tried to paint me as an emotionally abusive wife who had driven him into another woman's arms. He claimed I was unstable, controlling, and had made his life miserable for years. But our friends, family, and community saw through his lies. The evidence of his deception was overwhelming. Beverly lost her teaching position when the school board learned about the scandal. A pregnant woman involved in an affair with her father-in-law created too much drama for the conservative district. Harold's construction business also suffered as word spread through our tight-knit community about his behavior. Vernon, Harold's own brother, sided with me completely. "I've watched you be nothing but a devoted wife for 25 years, he told me. "Harold has lost his mind, and he's going to regret this for the rest of his life." My parents flew back up from Florida to support me through the divorce proceedings. My mother, married to my father for 52 years, was particularly disgusted by Harold's behavior. "Some men hit a certain age and completely lose their sense," she said. "But that's no excuse for destroying a family." The final divorce hearing took place on a cold February morning. Sarah had done her job well, securing a favorable settlement that left me with the house half of Harold's retirement accounts and ongoing alimony. Harold sat across the courtroom, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him. After the judge finalized our divorce, Harold approached me in the hallway. "Ernestine, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know that doesn't change anything, but I want you to know I never meant for things to go this far." I looked at this man who had shared my bed for 25 years, who had been present at our son's birth, who had promised to love me until death do us part. "Harold, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you'll never find it by destroying other people." 1 year later, I sit in my kitchen, writing in the journal my therapist recommended, reflecting on the woman I've become since that devastating Thanksgiving dinner. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, filled with my own energy instead of the weight of broken promises and hidden betrayals. Thomas visits every Sunday for dinner, a tradition we started after his divorce was finalized. He's seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of his father's betrayal and his ex-wife's deception. Last month, he started dating a colleague from his law firm, a kind woman named Patricia, who treats him with the respect he deserves. I learned to manage the household finances, something Harold had always handled. I discovered I have a good head for numbers and investment skills I never had the chance to develop during my marriage. The plumber fixed the guest bathroom sink himself after I negotiated a fair price, something I never would have attempted before. Beverly gave birth to a daughter in May. Harold's name is on the birth certificate, and he pays child support, but their relationship deteriorated quickly under the pressure of their circumstances. Beverly calls occasionally wanting to apologize and seeking forgiveness I'm not yet ready to give. I hope someday I can forgive her, but that day hasn't arrived. Harold's construction business never fully recovered from the scandal. Several longtime clients terminated their contracts, unwilling to work with someone who had shown such poor character in his personal life. Vernon tells me Harold has aged dramatically, looking far older than his 56 years. I joined a book club at the library, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for during my marriage. The women in our group have become close friends, and several are also divorced, creating a support system I never knew I needed. We meet every Thursday evening to discuss literature and life-sharing wisdom earned through experience. 3 months ago, I started taking painting classes at the community college. Art was my passion in high school, but I abandoned it when I got married, convinced that practical concerns were more important than creative dreams. Now, my dining room walls display watercolor landscapes. I created proof that it's never too late to rediscover yourself. A few weeks ago, Janet mentioned that her cousin Richard, a recently widowed accountant, had asked about me. I'm not ready to date anyone yet, but the idea doesn't terrify me the way it would have 6 months ago. Perhaps someday I'll be open to companionship again, but this time, I'll enter any relationship with my eyes wide open. The most surprising discovery has been my own strength. For 25 years, I defined myself as Harold's wife, Thomas's mother, the woman who organized family gatherings and maintained our social connections. I never imagined I could survive alone, much less thrive. Beverly's whispered confession that Thanksgiving night felt like the end of the world, but it was actually the beginning of my real life. I was 53 years old when my marriage ended, and I thought my best years were behind me. Instead, I've learned that betrayal, while devastating, can also be liberating. The woman I am today would never tolerate the subtle disrespect I accepted for years without realizing it. Harold's wandering eye, his dismissive comments about my interests, his assumption that his career was more important than mine. I see now that the affair was just the final expression of a dynamic that had been slowly eroding my self-worth for years. Thomas worried about me living alone in this big house, but I love the solitude. I wake up each morning accountable only to myself, free to pursue whatever interests me that day. The silence that once frightened me has become peaceful, a canvas for creating the life I want, rather than the life someone else expects. Some people in our community treat Harold's midlife crisis as a temporary lapse in judgment, suggesting that I should have fought harder for our marriage. But I know the truth about second chances and fool's pardons. A man who could lie to my face for 3 months while sleeping with his daughter-in-law had revealed his true character, and character doesn't change. Trust once broken so completely can never be fully repaired. I learned that wisdom costs something, but it's the most valuable education I've ever received. The naive woman who set the table that Thanksgiving morning believed in fairy tale endings and unconditional love. The woman writing these words knows that real love requires respect, honesty, and commitment, qualities Harold proved incapable of maintaining. I've stopped wondering what I could have done differently. Some people will blame the betrayed wife, suggesting she should have been more attentive, more attractive, more understanding. But affairs happen because of character flaws in the person who chooses betrayal, not because of deficiencies in their victim. My mother calls every Sunday after I finish dinner with Thomas. "You're glowing," she told me last week. "You look 10 years younger than you did at Christmas." I feel younger too, unburdened by the weight of a relationship that was slowly suffocating me without my realizing it. The hardest part wasn't losing Harold. It was grieving the man I thought he was. The devoted husband, the loving father, the reliable partner I believed I had married. That man never existed except in my imagination, created from hope and wishful thinking, rather than honest observation. Tonight, I'm making plans for a solo trip to Ireland next spring, something I've dreamed about since college, but never pursued, because Harold preferred familiar vacation destinations. I'll walk the cliffs of Moher and explore ancient castles accountable to no one but myself for how I spend my time and money. Looking back at that terrible Thanksgiving night, I realize Beverly gave me an unexpected gift, along with devastating news. Her whispered confession forced me to confront the truth about my marriage and my life truths I might have ignored for years if given the choice. I thought my life ended when she told me about the pregnancy, but I was wrong. My real life was just beginning. I'm 53 years old, and I'm finally discovering who I am when I'm not trying to be who someone else wants me to be. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed your life's direction? How did you find the strength to rebuild after betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming life's unexpected challenges, and please share this with someone who might need to hear that it's possible to create a beautiful life after everything falls apart. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for the best chapter of your life. Until next time, keep believing in your own strength.